Now that the Pokemon Company has made their definitive statement about the national dex, we're at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to complaints about Pokemon Sword and Shield, and for today's video, I'm going to be focusing on this, because now the kitchen sink is being hurled at Game Freak, and everything that has ever been removed in every Pokemon game is suddenly more of a problem than ever before. People will not settle for mediocrity any longer from Game Freak, and that's just outrage for the sake of being outrage at this point, much like many of the things in 2019 and today's culture and online society. So if you end up enjoying the video, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends. Let's go and have a good discussion about the features that have been removed. Was it good that some of them were removed? Which ones need to be kept in Pokemon or reintroduced at some point in the future? And all kinds of fun stuff like that. Also, if likes and dislikes are disabled, it's to prevent dislike botting, since that's a major problem with YouTube right now, but your like is still counted and it's appreciated now more than ever before. So let's get into it by just kind of seeing what this guy has to say about the removed features. I would like to stress once again, the culling is deliberate. They have stated they do not plan to patch Pokemon with a future update, and that they would like all future games in the main series to use this policy for quality purposes. I like how they put quality in quotation marks when it literally improves the quality of the games, and they just can't accept that fact. In the meantime, let's take a look at features Game Freak has removed in the past in an effort to keep each game a unique experience. What's the problem with that? There's the condescending quotation marks again. Once again, one step forward, one major step back, every single gen. And I like how instead, like, why not just say one step forward, two step backs? But we know that Pokemon is always progressing forward, don't we? And it's not really a major step back when you take out a unique feature that was meant to just be a core element of the game that it's in. We don't have to keep everything going on forever, and that creates a lot of clutter and a lot of problems that we will explore later on in the video. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is one of the dumbest arguments I've seen, and those are the people that are saying that you can't make something better by removing features, and to them I have two words: Festival Plaza. That I haven't seen any arguments in any of these lists of people saying that they want the Festival Plaza to return, and it's always, Pokemon Sun and Moon sucks because the Festival Plaza is worse than the PSS, and the PSS is on this person's list of removed features and Game Freak's mediocrity and whatever. But here's the thing. The Festival Plaza wasn't made to be worse than the PSS. It was made to be better, and objectively, it has more content behind it than the player search system. It's just that it was really janky to use, and that isn't necessarily an inherent fault of Game Freak. It's not like they were like, oh yes, we're just going to make it a worse feature and we're going to kill off competitive this way. No, they thought they had a system that would work, that had a lot more functionality, and it just ended up being clunky, thus showing that actually adding things or keeping things for the sake of keeping them just makes things harder to use and worse off overall. And the thing about the Festival Plaza itself is that it was a really cool place. It had customization, there were rewards for consistent and daily use, and it also promoted player interaction. These are all things that people want in Pokemon games. Like the customization, it felt like a replacement for a secret base, because I had my own personal area that I could set up in the way I wanted to, and that could take hours and hours of gameplay, which was pretty cool. Now, it's not as good as a secret base or underground, but it was still your personal area that was personalized to you. The rewards needed to be better. I think that's a big problem with the Festival Plaza. Also, the currency and player interaction really wasn't that fun or engaging, but it delivered on things that players have wanted. It just didn't deliver in a good way. But missing the mark isn't something to blame Game Freak on, because their ambition was correct. It's just the execution ended up being worse than a feature we already had, even though the Festival Plaza was meant to add more to the games. And then people are also talking about O-Powers. Well, we had that with the Roto Lotto, and once again, it seemed like a cute system that was supposed to like encourage and improve the games, but ended up being a bit more frustrating. The RNG element, the interaction with Rotom decks, which pretty much did nothing throughout the games except when you click on it only to get O-Powers, really didn't make the games too exciting. But you could see that there was a little bit extra put into it than O-Powers and the player search system. Also, let's be real, O-Powers were overpowered. That you just get all of this cool stuff for free on a pretty limited timer. And I know while we all enjoyed Launch Darius with Heart of Gold, we just can't keep those things forever. So also I feel like, you know, a nerf to O-Powers, while fairly unfortunate compared to being able to abuse them in older games, is something that needed to happen for the health of the game, which also kind of goes into the other things. By removing Pokemon from the decks, you're improving the overall health of the game, so removal can be a good thing. And then a lot of things on the list are also just replacements for other features. People say said that they want horde battles back, and that it's bad on Game Freak to remove horde battles. No, they replaced it with SOS. Now, SOS wasn't nearly as satisfying as horde battles, but again, that's not really a fault of Game Freak. They tried to implement a different, new, and better feature like players have been always demanding of Game Freak, and it just missed the mark. And then that brings us to the Poke Radar and the Dex Nav. Now, the Dex Nav is just better than the Poke Radar in every way imaginable, and is one of my favorite features that has ever been put in a Pokemon game, but it is also strangely absent from Pokemon Sun and Moon. I feel like this shows the unwinnable position that Game Freak is in. That they just slap the Dex Nav into Pokemon Sun and Moon, then they get called uncreative, lazy, not trying to innovate, and they just do the same thing over and over again. But then without it, when they're trying to like mix and mash and make things work in different ways, they get criticized for removing features. I think that is another big problem with Game Freak, that, you know, they're lazy and they don't change the game until they change the game, and then they just get called out for removing features. It doesn't really make too much sense. Now, I do feel like the Rotodex is a very missed opportunity. Like, the Poke Finder is cool, but it doesn't have any reward or benefit, and it's like a nice little Pokemon Snap 1.5 gimmick until you're bored with it, but then we lose all the other features from the Dex Nav. Now, I feel like the Dex Nav was kind of mixed into the SOS. The SOS was supposed to be the one-stop shop for everything. You have an interesting new Pokemon battling or wild Pokemon mechanic, and what that does is it gives you access to the IVs, it gives you access to the benefits of the Dex Nav, but just all in one place, which is other things fans have wanted. The reason why hacking is out of control is because people don't want to have to work too hard for their things, because once again, the player entitlement, as we can see and as we have seen, is just destroying Pokemon and the Pokemon community. So Game Freak was trying to make everything easier, and then that makes the Dex Nav a bit redundant or just useless when Game Freak attempted to have more benefit inside of a single Pokemon encounter. Now, much like the things we've talked about, it didn't go as planned, it didn't end up being as good of a feature, but Game Freak was trying to innovate and add more to the games. It just didn't work out. And then we start getting into how delusional this person is with their post, because I think that just shows a big problem with all the arguments against Pokemon Sword and Shield, is that it's just hate for the sake of hate. There's no critical thinking or common sense involved. It's just trying to be negative, and because of that, the arguments are incredibly flawed from the start, or just incredibly flawed entirely. So day-night cycle, or having an effect on the world in any way. We have never seen a pure Kanto game at night. Why does it matter that we've never seen a pure Kanto game at night? Why aren't the remakes or Gold and Silver version enough, and why did Let's Go have to have a day-night cycle, even though the entire gimmick of the 7th generation was about having a day-night cycle? The games that you bought directly impacted the day and night cycle. So I don't understand what this person is getting at. And if this is a direct response to Pokemon Sword and Shield, we see night in the trailers. We've seen different times of day through different elements of gameplay, and the wild area is going to take the day-night cycle and improve it in a way that we could have never imagined by having real-time dynamic weather in the games that also functions alongside the day-night cycle. So how is that a removed feature that people are upset with? The inconsistency of this is just absurd. Next up, we have seasons, and anyone that's arguing for having seasons coming back in Pokemon or blaming Game Freak for not returning seasons, they just completely lack the most basic of comprehension skills, because I guess they seem to forget that Generation 6 had seasons, that Kalos is an entire region that is a giant season. You start off in summer, you progress into autumn, you go into winter, and then you have the fresh renewal of spring, and this works better than Black and White. I didn't really feel any benefit to having seasons in Generation 5, and the removal of them doesn't hinder or take away from Pokemon in any way. If anything, just forcing seasons as a time-gated thing is worse than having it like in Generation 6. That if I want to experience an autumn stroll through wheat and then catch a pumpkin, I can do that. Route 15, the forest and the fairy city are some of my favorite places in all of Pokemon, and I'm happy that I can experience that whenever I want. Also, you have like these different weather patterns that really sell the atmosphere and the climate of that time. And then when it comes to Generation 7, are people really trying to make the argument that a tropical island needed seasons? That's just impossible. There's one season, mild. And depending on where you are, maybe 2 seasons, mild and hot. I was looking it up. Apparently, Hawaii has an average temperature in the winter of 75 degrees. I grew up in Florida, and the Caribbean is also very similar. There's 2 seasons, hot and very hot. Palm trees never change. The concept of autumn is a foreign myth, and everything else is a pine tree. how do people expect seasons in this region? I don't know. So that's, again, an argument I just can't understand, but people are just adding it to the list, saying the Game Freak is lazy for no reason. Next up, we have Pokemon Following You. Now, I feel that Pokemon Following You staying in Generation 4, at least staying in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, is perfect because I would rather have that just concentrated emotion of my favorite Pokemon game, of the most enriching, pure Pokemon experience I've ever had, and a big part of it is Pokemon Following You. If Pokemon just follow you every game after that, it takes away from that game, and it takes away from all the future games. So I think that is a very strong argument for the unique experience staying as a unique experience and not needing to just carry over into every other game just because. Like, that is the argument of these posts, is just because. And then when Pokemon Following You came back in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which is, again, a passion project by Game Freak that is meant to capture the spirit of Pokemon more than the average main series game, people hated it. So players got what they want, and then they were upset about it. That just brings us to another problem with this. It's all entitlement. That you can't have everything ever that you've always wanted, and even when Pokemon Sword and Shield delivers on features that were never thought to be possible inside of Pokemon. Game Freak said in interviews that they don't want to do open world, or they don't think they can make open world work with Pokemon, but they made it happen in the very next generation after those interviews, and people aren't happy with it. You can never please all the Pokemon fans, and no matter what you do, it's going to fail. Like, that's just the stupidity of the Pokemon community right now, and entitlement is one of the biggest issues, because either the arguments don't make sense, or it's wanting everything when everything isn't deserved. Which also brings us to the next one. Hoopa Rings Ultra Wormholes. How are they calling those cut features when those were simultaneous features when it came to generations? You can't have every legendary Pokemon available in every single game. That's nonsense. I actually really don't like it that you can catch all the legendary Pokemon in every generation, because that's a lot of Pokemon to keep up with, and it devalues all of the impact of the legendaries. That, you know, if you can only, like, that's why I think Pokemon Sword and Shield is going to be really cool. That if they're restricting the decks, but they still kind of like trickle in all of the legendary Pokemon, that's going to be much better for game balance. That's also going to make it a lot better to go out and catch legendary Pokemon. It was really cool in X and Y when you could just suddenly get the legendary birds. You also had access to Mewtwo. In Heart Gold, Soul Silver, you could go back and get the Generation 3 Legends. This is all some really cool stuff. But then, like, now that we have, God, how many is it? Like, over 40 legendaries? I don't even know how many legendaries are in Pokemon anymore. It's like over 40 or something. And this person's trying to make the argument that you need to have that in every game? Even in every generation, it's starting to get overwhelming, and it's just going to be worse as we get more and more generations inside of Pokemon. It's gotten to the point where they're completely devalued into nothing. Like, these are supposed to be some of the most powerful Pokemon regarded in myth and stuff, and you just walk up, you touch a circle, and then you use False Swipe and catch it for free. That's not fun. That's not engaging. The battles aren't, like, catching legendary Pokemon hasn't been a challenge in like over a decade when it comes to Pokemon games, so just kind of slapping them in there doesn't really add to anything. And then that also comes to another argument: in-game event Pokemon or key items. Once again, there's way too many to support multiple events and stuff, and even then, they don't really matter too much. Like, it was cool back when there were less Pokemon. It was a new way of, like, introducing game mechanics in the games. But at this point, since all the legendaries are given for free, we get mythical events anyways, we have all these things just kind of being slapped in, it just adds bloat that people don't want inside the Pokemon games. And the thing is, if you don't make them time-gated or special, they're just free and worthless, and people are going to hack them in anyways. So that brings us to another issue about entitlement, that this is also why we see the explosion of hacking in modern Pokemon, that people are like, oh, I don't want to have to work for my things, I just want everything, therefore cheating is okay. You know, we've seen this becoming an issue with Pokemon more and more over the years, and it just keeps getting worse and worse with no sign of slowing down, because everything just boils down to entitlement. Now, here's the thing though, I'm going to be lazy for the rest of this video. I've been talking for a lot, we still have like half of the things to go through, so I'm just going to kind of blast through them. We have the Battle Frontier. Now, the reality of the Battle Frontier is like less than 1% of the player base actively engaged with all of the battle facilities, so either people are crying about it or just hypocrites and, again, being outraged for the sake of it, or they are in such a supremely small minority, it's not worth catering to them when you can make other elements of the game better just because those features are going to be ignored. That's what Game Freak said in an interview. The reason why it wasn't in Omega Green Alpha Sapphire, not laziness, not because they're cutting back on features, but because people didn't engage with the Battle Frontier, but you still still find other battle facilities, because that's where I get my fix. I didn't care about anything in Battle Frontier. I just want 3-on-3, straight up, no gimmick Pokemon battles. I want to get my battle points, and I want to play on the battle spot and beat up on kids, and then become the best Pokemon battle in the world. So the rest of Battle Frontier doesn't really matter too much to me. But then people say, but I'm not a competitive player. I mean, if you're engaging in the Battle Frontier, that is competitive Pokemon. That is in-game Pokemon. So I don't really, like, understand what that argument is. But yeah, Battle Frontier, you know, we have enough for battle facilities. Pokemon Ultra Sun Ultra Moon has 2 battle facilities. So we're getting closer to the amount in the Battle Frontier, but people still aren't happy with it. Also, if we look at the Pokemon Sword and Shield map, it looks like a Battle Frontier at the very top of the map. I can't wait for the news update that tells us what this is, but yeah, it's looking pretty promising that there's going to be a lot of post-game content that's adding more to Pokemon than we've seen before. Seals. Now, I will admit, ball customization is one of my favorite things in Pokemon, but we have Diamond and Pearl remakes coming up at some point. Maybe the next games, maybe the games after. Either way, I like it being unique to Generation 4. It would take away from the remakes if we had Seals come back in for this game, and then it's like, oh, by the way, that, you know, the big gimmick, one of the cool things that made Generation 4 unique that you're waiting for in a remake, that's not special anymore. That's pretty dumb. Secret bases. Again, I really like having personalization. Like, the underground in Generation 4 is one of the things I'm most hyped for. I really hope there is some kind of personalization, customization area that we get inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield. You know, secret bases, I feel, are something that could be in every Pokemon game, but we just had them with Omega Green Alpha Sapphire. Again, the Festival Plaza was supposed to be a personalized, customized area that somewhat replaced secret bases. It just didn't work out. Then we have Soaring. Now, Soaring, I feel, was trying to kind of be replaced with the new system for Pokeride, and I think, again, it just comes down to the region. Much like we can't have seasons, it doesn't make sense to have Soaring for the Alola region because the islands are so far spread out. It's not fun to have nothing happen for 2 minutes while just kind of soaring over empty ocean, and then we ended up with Mantine Surf anyway, which kind of gives us that overworld bridge between the games. Again, just because a feature exists, it doesn't mean we have to implement it the exact same way. Game Freak is still trying to innovate on top of that. Also, I feel Flying to Routes was really awesome, but maybe a little overpowered, but also something that probably needs to come back. We're just going to see how that goes, but overall, yeah, Soaring doesn't need to exist just because it existed like 3 games ago or anything like that. Contests. Once again, contests, those are special to the games. It's cool to have them in Omega Green Alpha Sapphire, but if contests were in Pokemon Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, I definitely wouldn't have played them as much as Omega Green Alpha Sapphire. So why waste the resources, why waste the time for something that's not going to be used or appreciated? But when it comes back in Generation 4, my Pokemon's balls are going to be pristine. My outfits and garments and all the little trinkets I dress up my Pokemon with are going to be amazing. I'm going to slap contests all day long, because I'm going to appreciate it more, because that's where it belongs, not just being there for the sake of being there. Let's see, what else is there to talk about? Triple, rotation, inverse, dive, and sky battles. All of those sucked except for triple battles, and the only reason people cared about triple battles was because AF Blaze on Fan Fridays made some really cool triple gimmick combos. But other than that, like, it's not a fun competitive format to play seriously. It's all about like setting up some kind of wacky gimmick, and if your opponent brings either a counter to your gimmick or a better gimmick, you just lose, and now you're just stuck in this long drawn out triple battle nonsense. But even then, like rotation, those are kind of lame. Inverse, what's the point? No one played those. Dive and sky battles were just a nuisance. These are things, like much like removal of Festival Plaza, these are things that only benefit Pokemon, and maybe triple battles should have stayed. Safari Zone and Game Corner minigames. Minigames are cool, but it's a legality issue. Safari Zone, we have the wild area. It's not going to be exact Safari Zone mechanics, but it's definitely taking the Safari Zone and then cranking it up to 1,000,000. Now, I do miss the customization that we had with Safari Zone and Heart Gold Soul Silver, but again, the wild area just kind of beats all of that anyways, and then we can save that for a future game that might need a Safari Zone. Like, that'd be really cool if the Diamond Pearl remake Safari Zone was more like Heart Gold Soul Silver and brought that mechanic back in a way that makes sense. So that's not really a terrible removal. Then we have challenge mode. I've made many arguments about challenge mode. It just doesn't do anything. It doesn't add anything to the games. Once you understand and you're good at Pokemon, you can't increase the difficulty in Pokemon. All the challenge mode means is that you add hours and hours of pointless grinding and boredom and repetition, or you still cheese the game anyways by just using X power items. It's not real difficulty, it's artificial difficulty, and that's true laziness. So I mean, I'd rather that they have actual balance throughout the story of the game than saying challenge mode it's harder and being poor about game development. Berry growing and blending, that was actually one of my favorite things from Pokemon X and Y, because I love that you could actually like build up and combo up all the berries, and then you get like super rare and exclusive berries that had awesome effects inside of battles. Problem is, hacking ruins this feature entirely. What's the point of spending the days to actually get proper berries when someone's just going to hack them, plant them themselves, or just trade them off on the Wonder Trade, and now all of that work is completely meaningless. And then this just seems like a feature that stays in the Kalos region. It kind of doesn't have a reason to only be in Kalos though. Like a lot of the other exclusive features and gameplay and stuff, it actually makes sense that it's only in that game or only in that region. So I mean, I think it'd be cool if we had that come back. But yeah, berries, they've either been like really played up or really downplayed. And then the last thing to talk about, hyper training sucked. It's objectively a terrible way of training your Pokemon's effort values. In theory, it seems like a good way to introduce newer players to EVs, but that was needed back in Generation 4, back in Generation 5, but not in Generation 6. By then, EV training was really well understood, and Horde battling is just infinitely better at getting your Pokemon's EVs maxed out. It's faster, it's easier, and it's more engaging, and it's less frustrating. Also, when it comes to any other method of getting EVs in the 3DS systems, it's just the worst. So that's a feature that Pokemon is benefited from by not having to worry about supporting or keeping up with. Goes away because it was terrible. Fact. Other than that, I think like removing Mega Evolutions and Z moves. Funny thing is, people, they're like, oh, Z moves are okay to go, but Mega Evolutions can't be touched. So the game is improved by removing Z moves. I feel Dynamax is going to be incredible for balance. I feel like it's actually gonna be a really balanced gimmick for Pokemon. True vanilla Pokemon, maybe a little better, but compared to Mega Evolution Z moves, Dynamax might be better than all of them for competitive balance and engaging battles. So that's gonna be really good. And I already did a video breaking down why Megas and Z moves being removed is a good thing. So you can check out that video if you want to, if you're still here, if I haven't made you rage quit off the face of YouTube just out of pure anger. Now you have to like lie down in a safe space or something because you can't handle my facts. But either way, that's it, guys. Like I said, the biggest issue is entitlement, but one point I want to prove is that there are so many features. Imagine all of those features being in Pokemon games for no other reasons than just being in there. It was tiring to just talk about them, let alone engage with them. As I pointed out throughout the video, it's better to have full appreciation for them in their games, especially if they keep getting updated. That's one cool thing about remakes. We had Heart Gold Soul Silver as a remake that had Pokemon Following You. We just had Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee as a main series remake that had Pokemon Following You. And that was something that I got to appreciate all over again in a really solid Pokemon experience. Then we have whatever's coming up in Diamond Pearl remakes. That's going to give like half of the things on the list back. Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, that innovated, added on, gave us things like the Dex Nav, made Secret Bases return, and then we just got to binge on them for a while. But then we can take that off season, guys, and it's going to make the games better for it. We also don't know all of the new features that are going to be in Pokemon Sword and Shield, on top of the returning features that Game Freak is going to add in, because they feel like it's time for them to make a return. So overall, the complaints just fall apart more and more each day. They make no sense, and the removed features, either there's a reason why they were removed, or it's alright that they're not there anymore, or just had a substitute feature that might have been better or worse. So if you guys enjoy the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.